You're now listening to The Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where three relatively grown men binge the iconic HBO series Sex and the City. So dust off those DVDs and grab yourself a white wine or even a Cosmopolitan and settle in. Take it away, boys.
Welcome to the Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where three guys watch their way through Sex and the City for the first time ever, mostly.
Four guys
I'm Cory
today.
Cavin. Four guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the show's about us, and then we have a lovely guest every time, and our guest today is a guy who has watched Sex and the City. Kevin, do you want to bring in our guest?
We have Greg Young with us. He is a podcast innovator.
That's
was
true.
At the ground floor.
Sure, of course.
It's actually a great guest. I feel like we could have done more prep because you're the Bowery Boys.
That's
is your
true.
podcast. It's
Right.
a New York City history podcast, and I don't know, maybe you'll have some tidbits for us. I'm sure you will. But amazing podcast that you should definitely check out. And Greg, thank you for being with us.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Greg,
Yeah,
can
no,
you
it's
tell
my
us a little
pleasure.
bit? Could you tell us a little bit quickly about the Bowery Boys?
Yeah.
And how long you guys have been going and stuff like that?
All right. So the Bowery Boys New York City History Podcast is a podcast about New York City history, but like it's people, places. It can be whatever, with whatever angle catches our fancy. Like it can be. Last time it was a park. It was Riverside Park, but it can also be people. It can also be important events. And we have been doing it for what seems like forever, since 2007.
Wow.
And we just recorded our 271st episode.
It's amazing.
There's a lot of podcasts.
We'd have to do Sex and the City like 3 times to
Yes.
get there.
I think we're gonna do like 90 episodes. I think
I think it's, yeah.
and then we'll put it to rest unless we choose another show like
Girls.
Wings.
Wings.
Oh,
No, I'm
excellent.
kidding.
Yeah.
I know.
I would love
Designing
to
Women
do
actually
Wings.
would be
Designing
pretty good.
Women would be a
Oh,
great one.
That'd be a pretty good one to do in this model.
Yeah.
Because it's like a
I love
show
that
that
show.
is both weirdly dated
Yeah.
and super relevant. There's also like these strains. If you watch it today, it's like, oh my god, they're like talking about like fat women, and they're talking about colored men, and they're talking about all the words and the things are not like exactly what like we wouldn't describe those today, and yet this how they handle those subjects, I think is rather thoughtful, depending on how the
Totally. There was a summer that my mom and I, my dad like traveled a bunch when I was a kid for work, and my mom and I, this one summer, my dad was traveling a bunch. Her and I watched almost all of Designing Women together. When I was
Who's in Designing Women?
Delta Burke,
Oh, okay.
Annie Potts,
Annie Potts, who's
Jean Smart,
Jean Smart. That's right.
and then of course Dixie Carter.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then the guy, what is his
Anthony.
name? Anthony.
Is
He's in the movie Mannequin also.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because it's set in the South, so it has a lot. There's a lot of things that make you kind of feel uncomfortable in watching it, but I think it's a little astute. Not as astute, of course, as Sex and the City.
That is
but
true.
it could be it's a second project.
Have you guys done a Sex and the City episode of the Bowery Boys?
No. It's funny because that has actually come up.
Mm-hmm.
Both like the history of the city that's used in the show, but then how the show impacted the show. I mean, had impacted the city.
Mm.
I came to New York in the mid 90s.
Uh-huh.
And so we kind of saw the city before, was into the show, then saw kind of what happened in the time after that.
Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes we give it kind of an outward importance as to the changes that it made to the city, the quote unquote gentrification and the turning of like previously like kind of working class neighborhoods or like industrial neighborhoods, like the meatpacking district.
Yeah.
I mean, the Sex and the City ladies did not turn the meatpacking district into some weird wonderland of high fashion and expensive cocktails. It reflected it, obviously, because they go to the meatpacking district on the show.
Right.
Yeah.
But it becomes like they branded, like their identity sort of branded onto a certain kind of culture. And then, of course, there was a period where people really identified with the characters.
Yeah.
And you would have whole gaggles of women going to those kinds of bars and having cosmos like that was a thing.
Mhm.
I wouldn't specifically blame that show was as much a reflection of things that were already happening,
Yeah.
the sort of like levels of gentrification. So, and then so we haven't done a show. I think we could pretty easily do a show.
How do you find topics for your show? Is there a process to it?
Well, I mean, we kind of try to do like random in a way, meaning that like if we, there's so many aspects to New York City history. So if we hit one really hard, we try to go like the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So if we do something that's sort of kind of serious, like the Civil War draft riots were this horrible thing that happened in 1863, where the city was pretty much burnt down by people who didn't want to fight on the Union side,
Right.
and so they burned down their draft offices, and there was a lot of violence. So, then we need to do something kind of fun, like the next show, pretty much. So, because there's so many different aspects of New York that are they're fascinating, and the more shows we do, the more subjects there are. Actually,
Yeah, you can't really run out.
no,
Yeah.
we have more now than we did ever before. So.
Wow.
Do you have one fact about New York that like still after all this time blows your mind, where you're just like, I can't believe this is actually something that happened in New York or a fact about New York?
I mean, like 1,000 of them probably, but just perhaps the idea that, like, there were so many, like, this was like where most of the immigrants came for like several decades, and the Lower East Side was the most densely populated place in the world
Oh, really?
in the late 19th
Really?
century. For like, I mean, I'm not sure if when it was overtaken by another, but it was like at least for like 3 or 4 decades. I mean,
Wow.
that is just extraordinary. As someone who used to live in the Lower East Side and who lived in one of those tenements, and thinking, wow, like 80 people used to live in this building, and now there's just 20. You know,
Yeah.
That's pretty insane.
I love that iconic picture. If you just Google the Lower East Side, it'll come up. But it's that picture of there's all the push carts and there's just everyone in the street, and it's crazy to be like that's just one street.
Yeah.
That's one little block that they got the picture of, not that entire neighborhood.
Well, I mean, you have to, and think of it this way, like they didn't think of like on a hot summer's day, what did those people do at night? Like people were sleeping in the fire escapes, they were sleeping on the rooftops. I mean, there was like, just imagine a building with people pouring out of it.
Yeah.
And then imagine the whole city almost like that.
I've heard older New Yorkers say that like when air conditioning happened, that like changed. Then you didn't know your neighbors anymore. When it was hot, you'd go on the
Interesting.
stoop,
Yeah.
and that's when air conditioning was there. That disconnected like everyone from their neighborhood.
Huh.
Which I'm like, whoa! You don't even think about that. You're like,
Yeah.
cold air, everything will be perfect.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, our latest show is on the history of diners and automats in
Mhm.
New York City. One really fascinating fact, which really struck me, was that up until like the 1870s, women did not eat outside of the home. Ever.
Were they not allowed, or just culturally it wasn't?
Well, because the only restaurants were only in like sort of places like districts like Wall Street,
Yeah.
and women were not in the workplace at that time, not until like the
Wow.
invention of the typewriter.
Wow.
So women only ate in their homes or ate in hotels or ate in boarding houses. I mean, it would have been very restrictive. And then once women, like two things happened. Like one of them was like women entered the workforce starting in
Right.
the 1880s.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one was women, like shopping districts, like people, you started having really wealthy people.
Yeah.
And those wealthy people had a lot of money, so then there were a lot of department stores. And so
Mhm.
then department stores, women went to those. And then, so a restaurant scene developed for those women. And part of that is where we get our diner. Because the luncheonette developed because of, women
Yeah.
needed to eat something while they were shopping. Or they needed to go somewhere like on their lunch breaks. So.
Not only a fantastic fact, but extremely relevant to Sex and the City.
Oh, yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
always talk
Yeah.
in,
I can't
in diners
imagine
and restaurants.
An episode of Sex and the City where the women aren't shopping or eating out. It would be a very different show.
That is a really good point. And the fact that, 4 women would go out and drink
Yeah.
would be unheard of
Yeah.
100 years ago. I mean, just that simply would have happened. The concept, these women would actually have been thrown in jail.
Oh my
probably,
gosh,
for
yeah.
just doing their basic like whatever like the scenario of the week is.
Yeah.
It would be like, oh, these women are prostitutes. Let's throw them into jail. So,
someone needs to make a Sex in the 1800s city and see what that one looks like.
Every episode is just them in jail. Samantha flirts with the same bailiff.
or they're like in a parlor
Right.
somewhere, and like like a woman, one of them, the Samantha walks in and her ankle is bare.
Oh, honey.
Charlotte had cholera again.
You're under arrest, sweetheart. He's like,
So yeah,
are those handcuffs? I think we could use those.
well, you've come a long way.
Yeah,
Becky, let's just say so. And thank goodness. So
It's good to oftentimes look, because when we review this show a lot, we look at the timepiece that is Sex and the City and how things have changed now. And it's kind of interesting, at least the little bit that we have, to look at Sex and the City and then look back and see kind of how it's progressed as women leading
they
up to Sex and the City.
Those their like their behavior, their how they carried themselves on the show was bold for that time.
Yeah.
Like bold
Yeah.
in the late 90s. Like
Right.
I mean that was like that was kind of the shock factor, which I feel like we lose a little bit of when
Right.
we watch it now,
Yeah.
because of course, like I think women are even
Mhm.
freer
Yeah.
to do the things that they want to
Right.
now than they might have been then, and then to see it depicted in pop culture
Right.
Mhm.
since then, like
Yeah.
the characterizations of women are a lot more nuanced.
Now, you mentioned that the meatpacking district, for instance, wasn't made from Sex and the City. It was a reflection of what was actually happening.
Yeah.
Do you think that, and you lived in New York at the time, was there bubbles of New York that Sex and the City was merely reflecting, or were they really pushing the boundaries and being, are women emboldened now because of Sex and the City, or was it a reflection in that regards too?
I think, and people have, you've probably read this, that like what the women of Sex and the City are really just gay men and how they would have acted in the late 90s,
Right.
especially the places that they go and some of the ways that they act was a kind of reflective of the gay scene in the late 90s. And so because I was a part of that, I can see that show and be like, oh yeah, that's like, it's
I
just
remember going to cafeteria at that time.
right, the cafeteria and the meat. I mean, the thing is the meatpacking district did have like fabulous fancy restaurants. This was years before the High Line was open, so it was like this abandoned like scary relic that was drifting around. But it was like, so there were some fancy restaurants, but then there were a lot of gay bars and downtown clubs there too, which the show I think hints at once in a while. It doesn't quite show in the way that that was like the meatpacking district in the mid 90s was like literally like people like going to like crazy clubs like Mother or like leather bars and then it would be prostitutes, but then the streets would be covered in like blood because of course they're like meat
So
that was
interesting,
produced
yeah.
there.
Whoa.
So they were still using it for primarily like meat
Butchering,
packing.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
butchering
there's
is what
still
it
like
was.
a vestige of it there now. I think almost as just like a symbol
Right.
of what it
Mhm.
used to be.
Yeah.
But there was like, I remember like slabs of beef being
Oh my
like dragged
gosh.
down the street, and that was just like like 1998. I mean, during the period of Sex and the City. So, but I don't think they ever showed that in the show. I mean, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you'll
Yeah,
when you
we
see
haven't
it.
got to the
it yet.
meatpacking district yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen that yet.
So maybe they will kind of show that.
Yeah,
because it's
yeah. So we're gonna watch
Our episode today.
15.
It's episode 15, season 2. It's called Shortcomings.
Shortcomings. Ooh.
Shortcomings.
I'm
Um,
looking forward to this one.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I mean, I used to. I mean, I had all of these on like DVD.
Okay.
I mean, which I've since gotten rid of, as most of my DVD collection has been dispersed. So I don't remember it though. I mean, it didn't jump out at me, so I
Cool.
can't wait to see it again.
Well, we'll watch it now, and then we'll talk about it after.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Bye.
We'll see you soon.
Episode 27 Shortcomings. Carrie dates an author who has a premature ejaculation problem and finds that she regrets having to break up with his perfect family. Child-phobic Miranda dates a divorced father who has a son. Charlotte's brother Wesley stays with her after his wife leaves him. And Samantha gives him exactly what he needs: sex. And now, back to the boys.
And we're back.
Welcome back, everybody.
We just watched that
Shortcomings,
episode.
So, wah wah.
I was like, you know what? I thought, because the last one was the fuck buddy, and then this, I was like, Shortcomings. Oh, I was like, that's interesting. They're not really going with the whole puns anymore. And then I was like,
Oh, yeah.
and that is like, almost
yes.
got by me. So, great episode.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
I thought that was good because, it wasn't extreme in the way that Sex and the City can sometimes be, where you're just like, what? In what universe would that ever happen?
Yeah.
Like, these seem to be like realistic scenarios that would happen separately, and so it was interesting to see them together.
Yeah, I totally think that everything in this episode could really happen to someone. It probably has happened to someone. We once heard that everything that happens in the show had to have been something that happened to one of the writers or one of the writers knew of intimately. And this one's like, definitely, you can see, I mean, we have friends who are probably dating divorced people with kids, and we have people whose siblings have probably hooked up with their friends, and all of it. Everything in this episode was definitely very realistic.
I'm impressed with the restraint, and we can talk about the child one more, but I'm surprised that they didn't go like she didn't accidentally throw the child off the roof or something. You know, I mean, like, what happens is like, oh, that could really happen.
Right.
It probably really did happen.
Yeah. And not that bad. The definite overreaction by the father on the part.
This show actually, I think they put into place, that's when Jim started banning kids or having their own playgrounds.
Yeah, right.
Now they have like, I don't know. I don't know.
So do we know what year this episode came out?
2000.
I
probably?
think 2000.
Yeah.
I double check.
I think I still had a New York Sports Club gym membership in
Back
2000. I specifically do not. I don't remember any children like
Kids
running
running
around, but everyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was different depending on the neighborhood.
Yeah, I like how they were talking about how Sundays just the streets get overwhelmed with kids. The Starbucks,
It is first
the
day.
bookstores.
We're recording this on first day of school.
Yeah,
too,
and as someone who spent several years in Park Slope, the weekends, it's like it is a sea of children.
Oh yeah,
They're everywhere.
I have a friend that I run with sometimes, and he's just a total misanthrope about everything. And he's just like the 6'4" jacked model, and he just like jogs, and he's just like, fucking kids. And then he just like will mime like hitting them as we walk by, and I'm like, dude, like, you got to move to a different neighborhood. Park Slope, not
Park
the neighborhood
Slope's
for you,
not where
buddy.
you want to be if you're not
I
doing
thought this
kids.
was what was interesting about that. The Miranda plot line. First of all, if they gave it to Miranda, like it would. I think this would have played differently had it been Carrie, or
Totally.
Samantha, because she was so dry and clinical about it. And then it also kind of previews what's sort of happening in the world with like helicopter parenting and the sort of new ways of parenting, because his reaction's totally unrealistic.
Yeah, but he does say in the beginning that he is the worst parent ever and breaks all the rules of parenting. And I definitely think that played out when he completely overreacted over a little nick on his head.
The kid did not need a stitch, right? He just was overreacting. Like the kid just had like barely a little cut.
Even if the kid does need a stitch, he shouldn't be walking down a lady using the bathroom.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
mean, that is like so clearly like but maybe, to be fair, maybe the kid didn't realize maybe he doesn't have women over.
Yeah.
But still, the whole thing, and it was weird, right? And what was interesting about it is it all happened in like a split second.
Right.
That like everything was fine, and then wait a minute, she's kicked out of the apartment.
This is the precursor to that NBC show, The Slap. Where he
This is the slap,
which I think was like a Australian miniseries before or something.
We've talked about the slap on
Oh,
here
yeah, we have
multiple
talked about
times.
the
Yeah.
slap. That's right.
So I'll do a quick recap. Essentially, there's probably 3 stories because I think Samantha's and Charlotte's are pretty similar. Shortcomings has to deal with shortcomings in relationships with all of the women. Miranda, of course, starts dating a divorcee who has a child, and she's wrestling with the baggage of dating someone who has a kid. Carrie, of course, starts dating Von Weisel, a writer, who she falls in love with her family, but their sex life is not as good as she would like it to be. He has premature ejaculation issues and refuses to talk about it, and she wrestles with what that means for the relationship. And she's also really into their family, which we'll get to. And then, of course, Charlotte has her brother Wesley, who's getting divorced from Leslie over at her house. And when Samantha and Wesley, the old adage, when Samantha and Wesley meet, sparks fly. And that's exactly what happens. So Charlotte has to not only deal with the sadness of her brother's divorce, but her best friend banging her brother. And so let's we'll dive back in, I guess.
We're gonna dive.
I think we can start off by saying we have a listener. Then Leslie, we have a listener named Bruna. She came to our Bell House show and she listens, and her husband's name is Bruno. Bruno and Bruna.
Bruno and Bruno.
Oh.
Isn't that great?
Oh, that's fantastic.
So shout out to Bruna if
Yeah.
you're
That's
listening.
Bruna and Bruno.
We'll see if she's still listening.
I mean, my parents are named Mary and Jerry.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so
It
great.
happens in the real world.
My
yeah.
parents are
amazing.
named Lynn and Laura, which is not.
Well,
It's like
well,
there's
it's-
some alliteration.
I mean, it's so.
Shout out to
I
you,
thought
Dad.
that was a nice storyline. Although I think the way they set it up was a little hokey. Have we seen Wesley before? Is this the first appearance
We've
of this
never-
brother character?
I
Or
think this is the first appearance
comes
of Charlotte's
back.
brother.
well, I don't. I'm not sure
Okay.
actually. I
I
don't
don't
remember
think
him.
we've seen
No, we haven't.
any relatives of any
That's
of them, have
what
we?
was jarring. It was sort of like, oh yeah, Charlotte doesn't exist in a vacuum.
I actually
Yeah.
was confused. Actually, I didn't know. It was like, wait, is that who is like an ex-boy? Who is this? Ex-boyfriend?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
whatever. And then when she sort of explained, yeah, it's out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Family members.
Which is
Yeah.
a little weird that they because when you have lasting friendships in New York, you become very familiar with your friends' families. I mean, New York is such a great place to travel to that families are always traveling here. So it's like I've
Mhm.
met your parents, Kevin. You've
Mhm.
met my parents. I've met your parents. You've
Mhm.
met my brother. Like
Yep.
we all kind of know each other's families a little bit.
Yeah.
And they were all such good friends, and they didn't know anything about this Wesley guy, which I imagine
Yeah.
isn't super
Well,
accurate.
If they're
He was
super
married.
close.
He was married. Maybe, now he's getting out of the family life
He's got to get into New York
and into Samantha.
and get into
Take
Samantha.
a tour.
Get out.
Take a little bus tour.
So
Hop
that
on,
was-
hop off.
I thought the most intriguing information in the following scene with them was that Charlotte doesn't have vodka in her house.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah.
Because he was like,
He wanted a stiff
really?
martini.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is perfectly understandable. She was making these muffins
It's
that Nana
also-
used to make.
People
Yeah.
love muffins in the show,
we-
and muffins
yes.
are gone.
In the
Muffins are not
Hamptons
popular.
episode,
Yes.
she went to get the good muffins. Yeah, we were saying
Scones are the new muffin.
or maybe
Or
it's a
croissants?
whole carb thing that
I think it's
people
a carb thing because
Bagels lasted though, and
Bagels-
the Weisels had their bagels and their
Oh, yeah.
their
And-
fish.
yeah
and
bagels
are
hold
always
up.
going to be
We
around.
also live in New York, and
That's
bagels
true.
hold up more here.
yeah, but I do think the muffin fad probably went a little bit down with the Atkins diet and with the South
Yeah, I think
Beach
so.
diet
Mhm.
and the concern with carbs.
When you were here in the '90s, were muffins
Yeah, I'm trying to think about did I eat muffins?
Like a giant, those giant chocolate chip chocolate muffins that they would have at the front of like a coffee
Uh-huh.
place or something. I don't see those that much anymore, and I can't imagine eating one of
No.
those
you
for
go to the
breakfast.
meatpacking district, you go to Leather
Well-
Barn, you grab a muffin.
Well, there's obviously Magnolia. So then the
Yeah.
show, obviously, then not to spoil,
Yeah.
plays into other baked goods
Right.
in a
Right.
major significant way. But
Yeah.
it's true that's not a muffin.
Which brings forth the cupcakes and the cupcakes fad. Cupcakes are still around. They're still pretty big, like
And
Baked by
didn't-
Melissa and all those.
And
and all the
big
cupcake is a muffin with icing on
frost
top.
on
It's a muffin with a hat, a muffin
Yeah,
with a
it
frosty
is.
little hat.
Uh-huh.
But Sex and the City kind of kicked off the cupcakes thing, right? I think that's what
yeah,
we've heard.
yeah. That is totally true.
Yeah.
Like that is a lasting impact. I think you could draw to the show
Oh, yeah.
because it was specific. It was not only that it was cupcakes, but it was cupcakes in this particularly
Right.
kind of romantic, real life place.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that was what that was. But yeah, muffins. I think that there were. Gosh, I don't
In
remember. I don't
Seinfeld,
remember
they
those
talk
type
about the
things.
muffin top shop. Like there's a whole
Yeah.
Yeah.
episode where they're eating just the muffin tops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
Huh.
think I liked that. Speaking of Seinfeld, I liked the Charlotte Samantha thing because it reminded me of when Elaine and George hang out and all they do is talk about Jerry, and that's like a joke they made
Yeah.
after a while. But this was I would not have guessed. I was like, oh yeah, Samantha and Charlotte are autonomous friends outside of that, and usually it's based around Carrie or so
Right.
far based around Miranda. So I thought that was nice them to have their own thing to deal with without
Mhm.
anyone else. And I thought it was I just thought it was a good storyline, and I liked how they made up at the end.
Yeah.
I thought they handled it the way everyone should, and it was the right amount of tension of like she should be pissed, and then she also should apologize and then have a good time.
I.e., that is exactly how it plays out in the real world.
Mhm.
Probably, like
Yeah,
what happened was
Yeah.
exactly how.
Yes.
Like I have been in a situation or seen situations like this that happened exactly the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Where someone's slept with a sibling or a cousin or
Right.
something. Understandably got upset about it, and then
There's
Always
there's like a
there's a
quick
resolution.
overreaction and then an accepted apology.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah.
there's not bad blood forever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
A basket of
that
muffins.
Samantha gave her like the basketball slap in the ass. Like, get in there, champ. Like,
yeah, exactly.
it's so Samantha.
I mean, it's very Charlotte that like the apology came with this huge basket
Yeah.
of like, oh, it was muffins, and there was like, if you notice, some sort of jam. It was like it was a weirdly impersonal gift.
Right.
Like it was,
I know you love gift baskets.
But that's the second time when they went up to that not the Bachelor, when they went to the baby shower episode. Doesn't Charlotte bring like a giant basket gift to
Oh,
Lainey,
yeah.
too? That's her
you
thing
know,
is baskets.
It's a formal declaration of goodwill, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
If it's good enough for, if it's good enough for the those fruit baskets,
Mhm.
I suppose it's good enough for Charlotte.
You know, also what is kind of nice for Wesley is like he's getting out of. It's kind of like the picture perfect thing for Samantha. There's not a guy who's trying to like win her over, and she's not using a guy. It's like she's like just looking at like bang interesting people and have a good time, and he's just like, I'm just getting out of this marriage.
Yeah.
This is what I need. It's kind of like the perfect match for them
Yeah.
for this.
Do you think
little
Samantha
few
knew she
weeks.
was doing him a solid? Like, do you think she knew she was like really help or did she think this is just an interesting guy that I'm going to hook up with, or do you think she like
She knew the
recognized
deal.
this man needs sex?
I think it was probably
I can
both.
provide it to him, and he's
Wow.
attractive,
So
and
it's a little bit like she has like a little Dr. Ruth Westheimer
Yeah.
thinking. She's like, I'm going to help this man
Right,
by
yeah.
having sex with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
she probably saw like a wounded puppy, and she just wanted to take care of him. And Samantha can do that.
It's sad that he hadn't had sex for 2 years and he lasted longer than Justin Theroux.
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Sex all the
Yeah.
time.
Also, that was the second time we've seen Justin Theroux in the show. Only a season apart. He
Yeah.
was in season 1 and season 2.
oh, it's
I
a
guess
different character?
Different
Different
character, though,
character,
right? Who did
Yeah.
he play the first time?
he's in
Sure.
Was
remember-
the shirtless dance guy, the shirtless guy at the club?
he's the I think when she goes, I think it's when, remember she like calls Big and she's like, I'm out with some younger guys, and they're at
Mhm.
some bar in
Yeah.
Union Square. I think that's who Justin Theroux
Okay.
is.
I remember you guys bringing him up, but I don't remember if it was like the same character or not.
I think that's when it is, but it's a totally different character. He
Let's-
does look different. He has like a shaved head and glasses in this one, and he
Okay.
has like longer hair in the other one.
That said, like he still looks almost the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that is true. I did like describe a way that it'd be like, we're gonna make him look totally different. Shave his head
Yeah.
short and put glasses on him. That's like the
Well-
worst villain disguise ever.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's because I guess it's because we recognize him now as a known actor.
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's sort of maybe a little
That's
harder
true.
to disguise that. So
Have you guys ever been in a situation like Carrie has been in, where you're dating someone and there's something not super right about it, but there's like they have like a family or a cool apartment or like a dog you really like, and you're sticking around
because
with
of
that
the,
person because of the other attachments that you have to the person?
That's a good question. I don't know. I
You
need
don't
to. I need to think on that. I can't
Mhm.
I mean, it's like you're basically saying you're sticking around for the perks.
Well, I mean, that was Carrie's line, is like, when you date someone, how many people become emotionally involved? Like, it's not just the person you're necessarily dating, but are there other attachments that you can?
I would say that's one of the harder parts about any breakup I've experienced is like if you get to know the parents and you get along with them
Mhm.
Right.
or their friends and stuff or family, and that
Yeah, the friends is like a really hard one,
The
especially
friend- yeah.
like when you date
Yes.
someone and they have like really great friend circle, and it's not like, and the relationship probably isn't going to be working out, and you're like, man, like, what does this mean to all these great friendships that I've forged?
Mhm.
You know?
I definitely have seen friends, like friends of friends later after a relationship is over, and like seen people out and then been like, hey, and it'd be kind of weird. And then I
Yeah.
like said to
there's
some
like
people,
a pall over it or something,
Yeah.
right?
and I did tell people one time, I was like, hey, listen, I it's good to see you guys again. I know it's weird, and they were like, "It's not weird." They're like, "We get it,
But
we
it's
love
totally
you."
weird.
Yeah.
But it is weird. I mean, I've had a situation where I dated someone for a few years, and then it was just it ended in a way where I was like, "Oh, I am so glad that I am out of that situation." But then it was like the relationship ended in a very clean way, but
Yeah.
then the relationship with the friends was actually the difficult part.
Oh,
Is then
interesting.
trying to extract yourself out of those situations when nothing occurred between you and those people.
Yeah.
Is when that was like painful than the breakup.
That
Right.
happened
You know?
with this one when Carrie, was like, "I'm going to get out of this because he's not dealing with this well," and then she had to break up with the mom, with
Right.
Valerie
Mhm.
Harper, She
Which was a
like-
great scene.
It was
It was
such a
really
good
funny.
scene.
And,
It was
and
really
the mom
well
did a
written.
really great job acting that scene. 'Cause
Yeah, she's awesome. Valerie Harper.
What else is
Absolute
Valerie Harper?
legend.
What is
legend.
Mary Tyler Moore
comedy,
show.
comedy
And-
legend. Yeah, she was on. Then she was on the Valerie, then, which
Mhm.
was Valerie's family, and then the Hogan family when they killed her off because I
Right.
think she had a contract dispute. Do you know, by the way, who her son was on that TV show?
Jason Bateman.
Yeah,
That was
Wow.
that was
Oh.
wasn't that
Yeah.
the first big Bateman?
he was in Silver Spoons.
Oh, that's
before
right.
that. I am
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
80s sitcoms are my like weird like hole of like deep well of knowledge. What's interesting about the setup for Carrie's show, like as a sort of psychological experiment, what if Justin Theroux's character, what if he hadn't been kind of a douchebag?
Yeah.
And what if he had been like, oh, we should really work this out? So it would have
Right.
been like this. It was like a philosophical experiment of like, could she be in this incredible relationship with this person, but no sex?
Yeah.
Or, like the sex would have been like a
Oh.
disaster.
Well, she seemed open to that.
Yeah, to like
Yeah,
working-
she's the one that
working it
wanted to
out.
talk about the issue, and he's the one who completely stonewalled her and like got really sensitive about
Well,
it.
because I think at that level, I think a lot of people could relate to that storyline, and they had to kind of make him, sort of awful, or else maybe she, maybe a lot of people choose to stay in relationships like that because
Right.
it does have all these other benefits, and then there is genuine affection, but then he's awful, so then it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
And,
he just like flipped.
it's perpetuated by the fact that you're literally dating the expert on sex in New York City.
Oh
So
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
like carrying
That's
a
true.
lot of that. Like I'm sure if he had a relationship with just a random finance woman, it would have been a lot easier for him to talk about that issue. But when it's Carrie Bradshaw, when it's the expert on this,
Mhm.
it becomes a lot more difficult because she may have opinions or other experiences that make it hard.
I put on our Insta for people to message in, and we got actually one for each storyline. And
Okay, sweet.
and it's thoughts on seeing Justin Theroux again. Very cool.
Yeah.
And advice from the male perspective on his unique shortcomings.
Mhm.
And what would Steve's advice be?
What
So-
would Steve's
we're just-
advice
it's
be?
just-
I know. I heard. There's no Steve in this.
There's no Steve in this.
Oh.
But
We can still talk about what Steve's advice will be.
yeah, certainly.
In a little bit.
But we should. What would your advice be? I mean, my most crudest advice to him would be if you should
Sorry about that.
just play it. Just
That
play
was
it.
a little
we'll
premature
give you a
right
second.
there. That was a little premature.
Premature Steve
Kevin,
talk.
Kevin,
Which is seems
Kevin, talk about
appropriate.
what would your
but
advice be?
it would just be the crude advice of being like you should jerk off before you hang out with her so you can last longer.
I mean,
If
See, that to me is a band-aid. That's like how about telling him not to be such an asshole when talking about issues? Like she wanted to talk about it and he just completely shut down.
okay, well,
Because it is a thing of intimacy.
okay, well then what I would say is that they should have that experience where he shoots early and then hey, let's get a coffee, let's regroup in a half hour, and then we should probably be able to last a little longer next time.
Yeah.
But he shuts down, so they can't even do that.
Right.
I think we should combine you and John's experience, and that they should have the conversation, and he should masturbate during the conversation.
oh well,
See
that
if
would
that
work.
helps him.
Also,
No, but
Yeah.
clearly, I mean, there's like some deeper issues there with his mom, like making him discuss everything. I get that, like talking for him is burdensome and something that he probably relates to some sort of traumatic upbringing. But like it affected him so deeply that he not only shut down in front of Carrie, but then treated his whole family like complete assholes. So
There's a
that guy-
darkness. There's a darkness. If she had stayed with him, who knows what sort of deep, dark
Oh,
secrets
you
might have
know
come
that
up.
family after 5 years, like fuck that family. Like that is such like the amazing like first few weeks, and then you're like even the mom breaking up with Carrie at the end
Oh my
just shows
gosh.
like, oh, she's nuts.
There's so
Like,
many
that
weird
is an
parallels
overbearing,
there.
like,
crazy.
I
What?
can get down with that family. They seem super fun.
Well,
would
I know,
be-
but once they're your family, you're gonna be Theroux.
And then you got to think about your kids, how much you're that ends up becoming the movie Hereditary. How
Yeah.
the grandmother is like messing with. I don't know if you guys have seen that or not.
Exactly like the movie
And
Hereditary. Yeah.
You know what you're gonna want to do if you spend all the time with
Oh, I
Theroux's
know.
family? You're gonna want to go be by yourself at Walden Pond. Are my lit heads out there?
I was thinking there was like a Hereditary thing coming there. Never
But
mind.
I think, I would say, they. Oh no. What I was gonna say about that family is it reminded me so much of a Noah Baumbach film.
Oh yeah.
Because it was
Oh,
like in a
interesting.
big brownstone, like
completely.
totally, like even I was like, oh my gosh, this is like such a Noah Baumbach
Yeah.
film.
I could almost see this, in the early days, like in the 80s, they used to, like, when they did spin-offs of television
Mhm.
shows, they would have one episode with, like, when you were with a bunch of characters that you don't know, but then those characters would spin off into a show. Like, I could have seen
Yeah.
that family
Yes.
been, like, a new HBO show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, directed by a young Noah Baumbach.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't that
totally.
basically what they did with Meet the Fockers? Like,
that's yeah. But that's to the credit of the show that they made this, like in these few short scenes,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
saw what the stakes were.
Yeah, and you
Mhm.
loved the family. I was like, that became the storyline, but I was like, man, this family's great. And then I was like, oh, that's the point.
The
Yeah.
only problem is that for the husband, they should have gotten Wallace Shawn.
Oh,
I feel like
yeah.
that was a
my
Wallace
gosh.
Shawn role. He just was out of town or something.
Yeah, that would have been a great
It would've
Wallace
been great.
Shawn role.
I don't know who Wallace Shawn is.
Wallace
Oh.
Shawn is inconceivable.
Oh yeah, okay,
I
thank
mean,
you.
he's
Yeah.
did many
My
other
dinner
things.
with
but that's-
Andre.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So Mr. Upper West Side.
Yeah.
The T-Rex from Toy Story for all you.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
saying you can't last more than 2 seconds? We gotta talk about this, son.
I don't know. I wonder if Wallace Shawn's been on a Sex and the City episode.
I feel like he. I don't know,
by
but it
requirement,
seems
by
like
New York
yeah,
law,
as
he
a
had
New
to
York
have been on a
actor.
couple. Well, he was a semi-regular on Gossip Girl. So if he was
Okay.
on Gossip Girl,
Yeah.
he had to have been on Sex
I
and
feel
the
like
City.
he's got to be in a Sex and the City
it's so
somewhere.
funny too because he writes like these very like he has plays that have been banned in countries because they're so like sexually dark and
Really?
related. Yeah, and yeah, and then he.
That's
I
inconceivable.
had no idea.
It's inconceivable.
That's like when this is the same reaction I'm going through when I first found out that Bob Saget was like an offensive comedian.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Oh,
you grew
yeah.
up like he
What?
was just Danny Tanner, and
Yeah.
then when I heard like some of his stand up, I was like, hold on a second,
yeah.
hold on a second, that's Jesse talk right there. What are you doing, Danny?
Whoa, did DJ ever hear this?
So Corey, what would Steve's
Yeah.
advice be?
Well, that brings us to a segment of
It's a favorite time. It's a favorite guy. It's Steve Top Miranda.
All right.
Welcome to Steve Talk, podcast within a podcast where we
Mhm.
talk all things Steve. Unfortunately, Steve was not on this episode, but we have somewhat of a good idea what Steve would say given that situation. Corey, you want to take it away?
So I have a couple problems with some of it's with intimacy, and things have been rough at the bar, and I feel like I just been really stressed out. But this talk has been really good, and to be honest with you, like right now, I think I could go again. And I think that I could last longer. I think I could last a lot longer right now, Miranda.
That's so.
It's a favorite time.
Again? You've been both in and out?
It's a
We
favorite
always
We got to bookend it, man.
We're gonna keep every episode under an hour, and
We're
I mean-
gonna get it. We'll make a truncated in and
I
out
know-
for Steve talk.
I know that you said I know you said the spoilers are okay, but I'm not going to spoil this for you.
Okay.
Only to say that what happens there is a version of Miranda's storyline that involves Steve later.
Whoa.
Ooh.
Well, that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm
Because
going to say.
at this
Greg,
point,
do
we're not even
tell.
sure if Steve's ever coming back. I mean,
Oh,
we hope he,
oh, okay.
we know he comes back.
We were hoping at the end when we saw Skipper for the last time ever on the last episode, and
Yeah.
we were hoping that Steve would come and kill Skipper for Miranda's love.
What
But then-
what if they reuse Skipper again the same way they used Justin Theroux as just that they just shave his head?
It's a different guy.
That'd be so great.
You want to meet my family? Okay.
Speaking of Miranda,
Yeah.
Liz DeRoyne said the guy Miranda dates in episode 15 is unreasonable at the end of the episode. What do you guys think?
About the
Oh, I think
about-
we were
unreasonable.
all on board
Yeah.
with that.
I think so.
Yeah, it was a super realistic storyline until that guy acted the way he did.
Do you think it's unrealistic completely, or have you ever been in a relationship that's like going along fine, and then there's something that's like,
No,
whoa.
let's put things into perspective here. His kid took a stick and beat the shit out of her with it.
That's where he did whack
And he
her
was
in the
just
back
like,
of the head.
"Oh, sorry, should have gotten you a helmet," and laughed it off.
here's a worm.
He tried to
Yeah.
peep on her pissing, and she accidentally closed the door in his face, and now the guy's going to overreact? Come on.
Yeah, and
Like-
that child was set up as a vile demon
Yes.
that we have no sympathy for.
Right.
And so, maybe, I mean, had it been a more nuanced situation, had this been an hour-long drama, perhaps
Right.
we would have seen a more nuanced version of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So maybe it had to be on
Right.
a dime where things kind of twisted.
And maybe
But-
even if he it pained him to say just go, like when you're putting down your favorite dog and you're like,
Yeah.
just go, just go. But he was just like angry.
stitch.
Yeah, just get out of here. Beat it.
Yeah.
That was
Go.
very, very
and then what was the line, Carrie's line about if no one is there to see you off, then
Right.
you're never coming back again,
Exactly.
or something like
Yeah.
that.
And Miranda's been putting herself through the ringer lately in these
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
She's been
Last
good.
one she was with Kevin, the mean lawyer.
the yelling lawyer.
It was like, draft beer.
Oh my
gosh,
gosh,
yeah. I mean, that's
That was
what
the last episode.
what's she's picking some real zingers.
Well,
here,
she had
isn't
to choose this guy because she tried to go after Skipper. He ran away. Thank God.
You know what Miranda needs to do?
What?
Bang Samantha. Just feel a little bit better.
Oh yeah.
She needs to go visit that tourist spot. Open
By the
all
way,
night.
I'm sure you've addressed this, but it is very funny to watch these episodes with Cynthia Nixon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
in sort of modern context.
Oh yeah.
And then being like, wow, you could have used a couple things, a couple clips from that in an anti-Cynthia Nixon ad.
Oh, yeah.
Context.
I wonder
know?
if Cuomo even tried to do that. He's probably just trying to keep his head down till
Yeah,
it's over.
yeah. I
Yeah.
know
But it's
so.
I mean,
Or why didn't her campaign staff get creative with it and take Cuomo's head and almost paste it onto Kevin the angry ex's body and have her just cleaning up Cuomo's beard and stuff like that.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
did you guys see the video John Early did for her
Yes.
yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
It's so funny. He's
haven't
basically he's trying to interview her seriously, but he keeps on asking her Miranda questions. But
Oh, that's
Yeah,
funny.
that's
so
good.
funny.
That was pretty funny.
Was she in on the
oh
goof?
yeah,
awesome.
he's interviewing her, and
Well, you could have taken this episode and put Cuomo's head on the child's body, and then on the father, you can just put like Albany corruption.
Yeah.
He chooses to run into the arms
Just
of Albany corruption.
Cuomo tried to walk in on Cynthia Nixon in the bathroom at City Hall.
Andrew Cuomo touches all the elevator buttons when you want to take the elevator down.
Andrew Cuomo will hit you with a stick, New York.
And then put worms in your hands.
This has been brought to you by Cynthia Nixon. Oh man.
Well, if only we were in charge of her campaign.
Yeah,
I guess
exactly.
It's a little
Exactly.
too late now.
Okay, Mushy Doll says, question regarding
Doll.
our friends off the table, our friends' siblings off the table, which is the last storyline that we have.
No.
Meaning, should you not pursue any kind of relationship with siblings or your friends? I think it can get weird and messy.
siblings
You're
and
saying that, or they're saying it
Bushy
can get
Doll.
weird and messy?
siblings
Okay.
and exes just need to go through code. There just has to be
I agree with that.
communication
Yes,
beforehand.
very
Mhm.
true.
As long as you go through code, the proper code of conduct, then it should be fine. If Samantha was like, "Hey, your brother's super attractive," I mean, maybe that's different because they just met. But generally, if I know you have a sister and we're hanging out and we're friends, and I was like, "Hey, Kevin, I want to ask your sister out,"
Mhm.
then it's
My
on you.
My sister's married.
Okay, you get what I'm saying.
You're
Then-
married.
Wait, is that
what is happening?
Get off the mic. Turn the pod. No, okay. Go
we
ahead.
haven't established the ground rules. Is that cool?
It's code.
It's
Yeah.
code.
Right?
Is that in
Yeah.
code?
But I mean, the funny part about the scene in the bar is that I think that we're like literally a half a second when the scene started, we all maybe looked at each other.
I know.
Like, oh, we know
Yeah,
what's happening.
yeah,
here.
Yeah.
Because it's like it was so telegraphed.
Yeah.
And then thankfully, within the scene, Charlotte sees it almost
Yeah.
immediately too after I think like 2 lines
Right.
of dialogue.
Mhm.
You see
So.
Samantha get those thirsty eyes, and you're like, "Uh-oh, this
You're
girl's
like,
up to no
Oh, a
good."
jazz club. Oh, a jazz club.
Ooh. Yeah, but I think as long as there's communication, and then if Samantha were to say to Charlotte, like, I really want to ask out your brother, he's really interesting, and then Charlotte can at least process it. And if she
Yeah.
says no, I still think Samantha has the right to approach her Charlotte's brother as an adult. You can then say with good
Yeah.
conscience, ask him out.
My sister, I dated a girl in high school senior year, and then I went off to college, and my sister and her became really good friends, and we were apart long enough that like it was weird at first
Mm-hmm.
when we broke up, and then I saw her multiple times, like just in the context of my sister and her hanging out. But it went through that phase of having to like settle back down once the emotions are like chilled out again.
Mm.
Then it was over it. But it was weird for a time.
Yeah, it's weird
You
for
know?
me.
It's weird, and it's weird for me. I dated my sister's friend, my older sister Jamie. I dated this girl Emily, and my sister hated me all through high school because and sometimes I'd be hanging out in her friend group.
Well-
Now I look back, it was not cool.
How
Yeah.
what's the age difference of the girl you dated and you? How many years?
I was a sophomore and she was a senior.
Oh, that's like 2 years.
It
I
is.
mean, I guess that more
But in the
becomes a
context
friend
of-
group thing.
Yeah, and
that's,
it was
that's
in the
true.
context
That's
of high school. My sister was just like, my brother's invading my
Right.
space.
The funny thing is that whole plot line would have played out completely different had like literally all the characters been maybe a decade or 2 older.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
Charlotte would have probably like hooked her brother up.
Totally.
Like, it would
Completely.
have just played out. It's interesting that it was a snapshot of who those characters were and,
Yeah.
and their age, and
Mhm.
you can argue that was sort of immature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of Charlotte to maybe act that way.
Yeah.
you
And I
know?
think she. I mean, I think she realized really fast afterwards what she did, and that's why she brought over her nice little gift basket of muffins.
Mhm.
I liked the ending of that because I was like, it was realistic, like we said earlier,
Mhm.
and it was like the right move for their relationship.
I have a question for you comedians. If Charlotte were in an Eminem style rap battle and
Mhm.
she used "Is your vagina the hottest spot in town," or "Is your vagina in a New York City guidebook because it's the hottest spot in town?"
Mhm.
How would that have gotten like a pretty good reaction
In
in
a
a
the
rap
rap
second
battle?
battle?
line would be, "Yes, it is, and you're welcome to take a tour if you'd be down." That'd be the second line
That's
in the
Okay,
rap.
Eminem.
I actually thought that line could have just been slightly adjusted with the phrase "Yo mama" would have been at the front of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But
It's
If she was
funny
in a
that
Yo
that
Mama
set-
joke slam
that
competition.
set off Samantha because that's something Samantha would have definitely said herself.
Yes.
Like
Oh,
she would
yeah.
talk about herself that way. But I think it's like one of those things when you are wrestling like with your weight, you can comment about it. But if someone else is
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you're looking a
Yeah.
little heavy," you're like, "Shut up!" Like
Yeah.
you can make fun of yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was just kind of interested that line is the one that like literally set Samantha off, where she threw the thing and walked out and all that.
Yeah. It would be great if then at the end of the episode when they were having a good laugh about it, she pulled out a New York City guidebook and her vagina was in there. They were like,
that would be
5
the
stars,
punchline.
41
Turn to page
reviews.
16.
Well, you know what
It
I
used
thought?
to be on page 69.
They mentioned when they were talking about like their sexual histories. I don't remember. It was the beginning of the episode. It must have been, but Samantha talked about how she had sex with that one guy because he had a pool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And she
And
said she was 13.
13.
Now,
13,
that's
yeah.
pretty young, right?
yeah. And I hope it was like one of her figurative things that sometimes
Yeah.
she says, although I
Yeah.
suspect
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
Well, they just glossed over it, and it was interesting because I'm always looking for opportunities to humanize Samantha because I think sometimes she can still be in Caricatureville
Oh yeah.
when the other characters are like more 3-dimensional. But I was like, that's kind of wild. Like 13 is young,
yeah.
and
totally.
and that was interesting to
Mhm.
be like, I don't think they didn't take that line seriously and be like, here's the real sexual history.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was like, man, that's a young time to be.
If anything, it's very young to realize that using sex as a commodity for exchange for something else. Like oftentimes you'll hear like women in their 30s being like, yeah, we were having sex, but he
had like a nice job
there
and
were
we
benefits. He had a nice job or anything.
Right.
For her to realize that she was trading her sex just so she could get a tan at the pool is something that is very
Especially
young.
as a 13-year-old.
As a 13-year-old.
I mean, even just a 13-year-old really caring about their tan is a little weird.
right.
Mhm.
The 13-year-old be like, I had
Yeah.
a killer tan and I was a new teenager.
Yeah.
2 years away from getting my permit.
Yeah. That's a really old guidebook if she's been open since 13.
Oh, gosh.
Also, they referenced the Neil Simon Theater. R.I.P. Neil Simon died this week.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
they
sad.
said they were at some play there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had
Let's
to
do
say something.
Cosmo Scale.
Yeah, it's Cosmo Scale.
Cosmo
All right.
scale.
Oh, man.
So we rate the episode 1 to 5 cosmos.
Yeah. Quarter and half cosmos and fraction cosmos are allowed.
Fraction cosmos are allowed
Kevin,
as well.
you go first. And we'll go around this way so you can be last.
I'm a little nervous, but I really I don't have my list in front of me. I'm gonna give it 4 stars.
Okay.
It's been my favorite episode
But
in a
how
while.
many cosmos?
Out of 4
Yeah.
Cosmos, sorry.
Okay.
And
I wasn't
stars.
sure if stars equal
No,
cosmos.
yeah. No, and I would say that it just all came together for me. I feel like the last episode I said it all the elements were there. This I liked that the storylines were a little different, having Samantha and Charlotte. I like the people that just came in for one episode. I feel like they were so fully developed. It was like a lesson in TV writing.
Yeah.
And then a thing that I actually just got tingles just now thinking about it.
Oh.
But I think like most New York thing and most relatable thing of the entire series up to now is like moving here and you have your own people. Like she's like, you choose your family.
Yeah.
And at the end, like she sees her people and I'm like, that's what New York City is to me. The people that I met here
Yeah.
are like, it's like family, you know?
So many
like,
times you've had a crappy life event and then you turn the corner and all your friends are just like hanging out on a roof and you're like,
Yeah,
"Ugh."
I mean, not to like, so I had just lived in New York for just a few years
Mhm.
when this episode came out, and I was in the same boat. Like, I had selected my family. Like, I wasn't talking to many of my family members at that point in my life,
Mhm.
and then like I chose, so that moment that they show at the very end of this, I've had that moment,
Yeah.
Yes.
myself.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
it's so like it actually is really unique and beautiful because I don't know, since like everyone's so packed together, you can walk past people or you can be totally, your plans could totally change and you end up with like your favorite people in the world in this awesome place, and that's like the best part about New York. So I loved that ending, and I just thought it was like, it wasn't even that cheesy. Like, at least watching it now, it wasn't like other times I could imagine them doing it and being like, okay, they had to wrap it up and talk about friendship, but that was like kind of grand slam. So
Yeah.
I really, really loved it.
I am going to copy Kevin and also say 4 stars and 4 cosmos. It was a really good episode, and I feel like we've been due for like a full. It was. I think the writing was good. I think the cast, like, there's good acting in this episode.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The Valerie Harper scenes and stuff like that. And it was well directed. And I do think that moment you're talking about, like when she says, like, you want to go to your family and sees them. That's like, we've talked about this before, but that moment in Girls when Lena Dunham and I just got chills thinking about it. When the Robin song comes on, and it's Lena Dunham and Allison Williams, and they like, it's like the first time they really bond. I think it's at the end of the pilot of Girls, but there's so many shows. It was, people have told us that Sex and the City ends up getting a little more serious as it goes on, and this wasn't like over the head serious, but it was like a good, like, warm fuzzy kind of feeling. And and you're right, that is very New York to be like, all my friends are here at this restaurant. And, I just got out of a whatever situation, and now I'm here to see
shelter
them.
in the storm.
Yeah.
And SJP looking smoking in that dress at the end.
I have
Great.
to say, I mean, I don't know if you discussed. I have to say the fashion in this was so all weirdly good.
Huh.
Like, I mean, I thought all of the outfits were like you would see pretty much most of them
Yeah.
like on a person today.
Except for Justin Theroux's underwear, which you pointed out.
Oh, right.
What was it
The
with his underwear?
The only weird thing was that, and maybe those kind of boxers were still like in vogue in the 90s. I just thought that his character, based on what we knew about his character, maybe that was a clue to his inefficiencies in that particular, that he had to wear loose underwear or something.
Yeah.
But, like, I thought that was a little out of character.
Yeah.
for him.
But his shirt, the shirt that he's wearing at the end at the brunch scene with his family, it's like, it kind of looks like it was probably from Structure or like that kind of thing. But that's like weirdly kind of back now. Like, I feel like his shirt was even kind of fashionable and in vogue. So yeah, 4 stars all around.
I'm going 4 stars as well. I don't think we've ever all agreed, but
Cosmos.
it hit all the right marks. It didn't progress the story, like the overall. So I don't even know if there is like a Big and Carrie thing going on anymore or anything. I mean, it was an isolated show, but still really good, extremely realistic and relatable for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. And then, like you said, like when you live in New York, you kind of always have a sixth sense of where your friends are and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have like a downright awful day, you jump into that familiarity and it like makes everything a lot better.
Yeah.
So 4 stars for Cosmos.
There we go.
Well, it's weird because, so I have seen all the episodes. So then what I'm evaluating is different from what you're evaluating.
Totally,
so
yeah.
I'm going to give this 3.5 because it's actually fairly average in the overall scheme of things.
I'm so excited.
The show's going to get better and better.
Can't wait.
Like the plots get much more complex and everything. So this is fairly average, but I give it a half a Cosmo extra because Valerie Harper.
Valerie Harper,
Like she was so good in this show, and like you're just like, wow, that's all we get ever. Like,
Right.
that was like she made this like fascinating character. She only had 4 scenes at most in the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then she's gone.
Yeah.
And we never see her again.
And they could have spun that off. You're right. That family was like written well enough where they could spin that off into Justin Theroux's Noah Baumbach family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think we talked about how realistic the show is, and I wonder if the acting wasn't so good. If it was like that family doesn't exist. It's a testament to like the acting and the writing.
Oh yeah.
But also that the performances, that it was like that was realistic rather than it being overdone.
Well, it was realistic in the sense that a TV version of that family you would watch and be like, oh, this is a really great show, like a great family. If you actually knew them in the real world, you'd probably be like, okay, they're like insufferable.
Yeah. I
They're
go over there. It
twee.
always smells like capers though.
So it's like, so in that respect, those
And they can never get the scallion cream cheese. What's wrong with those
Oh,
people?
come on. Just get it out there, Mom.
Well, sometime in the future, we're going to be doing this for another long while, so we should figure out a history thing to do, or have the Bowery Boys back on, or do a boys.
I would love that.
A boys collab.
I can bring Tom on, and then maybe there's an episode. I mean, you won't really know until you come up to it.
Watch it,
But there may be something that has some. I mean, as the show gets more ambitious, they go out more places. There's more like location shoots, and so it'd be fun to like talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great. Well, tell us and tell the listeners where they can find the Bowery Boys and find you on social media and any of that stuff.
So you can find the podcast wherever you got this podcast.
Yeah.
Just Google the Bowery Boys. Our website is BoweryBoysHistory.com. And on all of the devices, all the things, Twitter, Bowery Boys, Instagram, Bowery Boys NYC, and
a good Christmas gift, maybe a book or something.
oh yeah, we have a book called Adventures in Old New York.
Yeah.
Which is just to sort of look at. It's like built like a tour guide of the past, pretty
Where's
much.
Samantha in it? I'm just curious. I'm
You know what's funny? Because I think there are a couple Sex and the City references. I think there had to. I think there is. I'm not sure if Samantha's specifically in there, but but the Meatpacking District has a whole chapter.
Oh,
Awesome.
awesome.
Great. Very
That's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah. So thank you for having me on.
Thank
I
you so
look
much,
forward
Greg.
to
This was really
following you on future episodes.
Absolutely.
Thanks. We'll
Thank
see
you.
ya.
See you later.
Bye.
The Bradshaw Boys stars Cory Cavin, Jon Sieber, and Kevin James Doyle. The show is produced by Jeremy L. Balin. For more information on the guys, check out their website at bradshawboys.com, on social media at The Bradshaw Boys, and if you see them in the street, tip your glass. Thanks for listening.